Hello everyone, I'm very sorry you can see me today on my camera. Uh, Silly thing happened. I was trying to log in into, not log in, I was trying to open up my camera and just keep jumping out of this and jumping in the other one, which is silly and I can't do that. And I've tried it again and again and then my camera went off and I don't want to reset again. So today we'll read chapter 14 of Pollyanna, Just a Matter of Jelly. Pollyanna was a little late for supper on the night of the accident of John Pendleton, but as it happened, she escaped without a reproof. Nancy met her at the door. "Well, I ain't glad to be setting my two eyes on you," she sighed in obvious relief. "It's 6:30. "I know it," admitted Pollyanna anxiously, "but I'm not to blame, truly I'm not, and I don't even think even Aunt Polly will say I am either. She won't have the chance," retorted Nancy with a huge satisfaction. "She's gone." "Gone?" gasped Pollyanna. "You don't mean that I've driven her away?" Through Pollyanna's mind the moment trooped remorseful memories of the morning with its unwanted boy, cat, and dog, and its unwelcome, glad, and forbidden father that was springing her forgetful old tongue. "Oh, I didn't drive her away." "Not much you did," scoffed Nancy. "Her cousin died suddenly down to Boston, and she had to go. She had one of them yeller telegram letter after you went away this afternoon, and she won't be back for 3 days. And now I guess we're glad, all right. We'll be keeping house together, just you and me." "All that we will." Pollyanna looked shocked. "Oh, glad? Oh, Nancy, when it's a funeral. Oh, but it wasn't the funeral I was glad for, Miss Pollyanna. It was—" Nancy stopped abruptly. A shrewd twinkle came into her eyes. "Why, Miss Pollyanna, as if I wasn't yourself that was teaching me to play the game," she reproached her gravely. Pollyanna puckered her forehead into a troubled frown. "I can't help it, Nancy," she argued with a shake of her head. It must be that there are something that isn't right to play the game on. I'm sure a funeral is one of them. There's nothing in a funeral to be glad about," Nancy chuckled. "Well, we can be glad it ain't ourn," she observed demurely, but Pollyanna did not hear. She had begun to tell of the accident, and in a moment Nancy open mouth was listening. At the appointed place the next afternoon, Pollyanna met Jimmy Beans, according to agreement. As was to be expected, of course, Jimmy showed being disappointed that the lady aides preferred little India boy to him. "Well, maybe it isn't natural," he sighed. "Of course, things you don't know about are always nicer, and things you do. Same with the portrait on the t'other side of the plate. It is always biggest. But I wish I look that way to somebody way off. Wouldn't be just great? Now if only somebody over in India wanted me." Pollyanna clapped her hand. "Why, of course, that's the very thing, Jimmy. I'll write to my lady's aider about you. They aren't over in India. They're only out west, but that's awful far away, just the same. I reckon you'd think so if you'd come all the way here as I did." Jimmy's face brightened. "Do you think they would truly take me?" he asked. "Of course they would. Don't they take little boys in India to bring up? Well, they can't just play you are the little boy India boy this time. I reckon you're so far enough away to make a report, all right. You wait. I'll write him. I'll write Mrs. White. No, I'll write Mrs. Johns. Mrs. White has got the most money, but Mrs. John gave the most, which is kind of funny, isn't it, when you think of it? But I reckon some of the aider will take you. All right, but I don't forget to say I'll work for my board and keep," put in Jimmy. "I ain't no beggar, and business is business, even with the ladies' aiders. I'm thinking," he hesitated, then added, "and I suppose I better stay where I be for a spell yet, till you hear." "Of course," nodded Pollyanna emphatically. "Then I'll know just where to find you, and they'll do you, and they'll take you. I'm sure you're far enough away for that. Did Aunt Polly take—" "Say," she broke off suddenly, "do you suppose I was Aunt Polly, little girl from India?" "Well, if you ain't a Queerest kid, grinned Jimmy as he turned away. It was about a week after the accident in Pendleton with the Pollyanna said to her aunt one morning, "Aunt Polly, please would you mind very much if I took Mrs. Snow coffee jelly this week to someone else? I'm sure Mrs. Snow won this one. This one's dear me, Pollyanna. What are you up to now?" said her aunt. "Are you the most extraordinary child?" Pollyanna frowned a little anxiously. "Aunt Polly, please, what is extraordinary? If you're extraordinary, you can't be ordinary, can't you?" "You certainly cannot." "Oh, that's all right then. I'm glad I'm extraordinary," sighed Pollyanna, her face clearing. "You see, Mrs. White used to say Mrs. Rawson was a very ordinary woman, and she disliked Mrs. Rawson. Something awful. They was always fighting. Father had. We had more trouble keeping peace between them than we did between any of the rest of the Aiders," corrected Pollyanna, a little breathless at her effort to steer between the silica of her father's past command in regard of speaking of church quarrel, and the charred bits of her aunt's present command in regard to speaking of her father. Yes, well, never mind," interposed Aunt Polly, a trifle impatiently. "You do run on so, Pollyanna, and no matter what we're talking about, you always bring up those ladies' aiders." "Yes, ma'am," smiled Pollyanna cheerfully. "I reckon I do, maybe, but you see, they used to bring me up, and—" "That will do, Pollyanna," interrupted a cold voice. "Now, what is about this jelly?" "Nothing, Aunt Polly, truly, that you would mind, I'm sure. You let me take jelly to her, so I thought you would to him this once. You see, broken legs aren't like this lifelong invalids, so his won't last forever as Mrs. Snow does, and she can have all the rest of the thing after he just once or twice." "Him? He? Broken leg? What are you talking about, Pollyanna?" Pollyanna stared, then her face relaxes. "Oh, I forgot. I reckon you didn't know. You see, it happened while you were gone. It was the very day you went that I found him in the wood, and I had to unlock his house and telephone for the men and the doctor, and hold his head and everything. And of course then I came away and I haven't seen him since. But when Nancy made the jelly for Mrs. Snow this week, I thought how nice it would be if I could take it to him instead of her this once. Aunt Polly, may I?" Yes, I suppose so," acquiesced Miss Polly a little wearily. "Who did you say he was? The man, Mr. John Pendleton?" Miss Polly almost sprang from her chair. "John Pendleton?" "Yes, Nancy told me his name. Maybe you know him." Miss Polly did not answer this. Instead, she asked, "Do you know him?" Pollyanna nodded. "Oh, yes. He always speaks and smiles now. He's only cross outside, I'll go and get the jelly, and Nancy's almost fixed when I came in," finished Pollyanna, already halfway across the room. "Pollyanna, wait!" Miss Polly's voice was suddenly very stern. "I've changed my mind. I would prefer that Mrs. Snow have the jelly today, as usual. That is all. You may go now." Pollyanna fell. "Oh, but Aunt Polly, hers will last. She can always be sick and always have thing, but his is just a broken leg, and legs don't last. Broken ones. He's had it a whole week now." "Yes, I remember. I heard Mr. John Pendleton had met with an accident," said Miss Polly a little stiffly. "But I do not care to be sending jelly to John Pendleton, Pollyanna." "I know he's cross outside," admitted Pollyanna sadly, "so I suppose you don't like him. But I wouldn't say it was you sent him. I would say it was me. I like him. I'll be glad to send him jelly." Miss Polly began to shake her head again. Then suddenly she stopped and asked in a curiously quiet voice, "Does he know who you are, Pollyanna?" The little girl sighed. "I reckon not. I told him my name once, but he never called me it. Never." "Does he know where you live?" "Oh, no, he never told me that." "Then he doesn't know you're my niece." "I don't think so." For a moment there was silence. Miss Polly was looking at Pollyanna with eyes that did not seem to be her at all. The little girl, shifting impatiently from one small foot to the other, sighed audibly. Then Miss Polly rounded herself up with a start. "Very well, Pollyanna," she said at last, still in that queer voice so unlike her own. You may take the jelly to Mr. Pendleton as your own gift, but I understand I do not send it. Be very sure that he does not think I do." "Yes, thank you, Aunt Polly," exclaimed Pollyanna as she flew through the door.